Ibrahim alayhi salam. And i'tizal means to remove yourself from the situation. Remove yourself, right? And from the environment, from them, from the environment and whatever they're teaching. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at the end of each of these, there's always a gift that is given. وَهَبْنَا لَهُ إِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when Ibrahim alayhi salam made i'tizal and he moved away, then we gave him وَهَبْنَا لَهُ إِسْحَاقَ. Right? We gave him Ishaq. And then in Surah Kahf also, in regards to the youngsters of the cave, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when they remove themselves, then we help them. So at times it will be farad. Now is that farad on everyone? No, because that's an individual. It's an individual. It pertains to the individual. A person might be strong enough to even send their children in homeschool. Their home environment is so strong. At home, their children can go to public school and then nothing will affect them, right? If that is the case, then yes, it's 100% okay for you to stay because you have the strength. But if I'm a person that is unable to stand strong, I am unable to instill the necessary qualities within my children wherein their iman is protected, and I can't do it in public school, like Sheikh Jabir said, take them out of public school. At that point, it's farad. And this is that, you know how the Ashab Kahf, what was their? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helped them when they stood up. إِذْ قَامُوا. So like how I was saying is that we have to take steps. At times, we might need to take these drastic steps. I might need to pull out my child from public school. I might need to move out of the city. I might need to move out of the state, right, and move to another state. If that is what you feel is necessary to protect your iman, then that is what you have to do, right? So there is no one clear-cut answer for everyone. The answer will be specific to each person's circumstances, right, and their situation, and then the answer will correlate with that.
So we're gonna inshallah just go take one question each, inshallah. So there was a few different questions that asked a similar type of question, which was that how can we if we're in a setting in a workplace where our employer is asking us to use pronouns, what should be our course of action? Now, the thing is on one hand, your employer cannot force you to go against your own personal religiously held beliefs and views, right? This would be an infringement on your religion, and also it goes against the Equality Act, and this would be a major challenge for that company. And I don't think anybody really wants to go through the court system for something like this. At the same time, however, this is one of those areas where open communication is necessary. Many employers also understand the sensitivity of this if you present yourself as a practicing Muslim and not making it a political matter. And this is kind of a sensitive, fine line. Oftentimes, we tend to make it a political matter when we bring it up. I don't believe in that. This is a slightly, abrupt and harsh way to present that view, even if you don't agree with it. But a better way to approach it, and remember, everything is semantics. Everything is on how you communicate it. Everything is about how you say it. So instead of saying, I don't believe in this, right? I don't do that. You could instead approach it from this point of view that I'm a practicing Muslim and I don't want to put anything here or to potentially put my, I don't want to put pronouns here and engage in any sort of activities that is, pro-LGBT, etc. I believe discussions on sexuality is a very private matter. And so therefore, I don't feel comfortable addressing these things in a public setting like this at work. I feel like my professional setting at work is very different than my private matters or matters of sexuality, and I don't think that they should come together in the workplace. Now, the thing is, this requires that ability to articulate that, to be able to communicate that to your employers, but it is a necessary form of communication. When you are able to articulate yourself in that fashion and in that way, chances are, more often than not, if they don't, give you everything you ask for, you'll get a lot of what you want. If they don't, for example, ask you to hang a pride flag in your office or something like that, then at the very least you don't have to deal with that. And the least thing you'd have to do is put your pronouns in brackets on the bottom of your email signature or something, right? And the reality is that we work at certain jobs that you have to pick your battles. Now, I'm not advocating in any way, shape, or form that we, just submit to whatever our company says, but you have to see some things, for example, like wearing a pin, wearing a flag, wearing a color, promoting a particular belief system or lifestyle, etc. This would be very obvious. But something as, for example, it's mandatory to put your pronouns. Now, the thing is, it's not mandatory. As far as I know, I have yet to hear of a company that mandates putting your pronouns in your email or in your communications. But even if it were to go that far, if you're comparing that with some of the other demands at the workplace, then, for example, for yourself, maybe that's the compromise you make. So in any case, in short, the more important thing to look at is pick your battles and know how to communicate. Because just as effective as saying it is how you say it. And I think that should be something to take into consideration, inshallah.
Another question is that many students are understanding to be anti-LGBTQ, but they're basically heading to the opposite extreme, which the questioner says is that pro-toxic masculinity and hyper-conservatism. What do we do? What we do is we teach them what Deen teaches us, right? You teach them seerah. You teach them how the Prophet ﷺ was, right? You teach them that this, the thing is that like the answer to all of this is in our Deen already, right? It just pick up the seerah, learn about the Prophet, how he was a man, how he was a husband at the same time, right? How he was not someone that gave in to everyone's demands, yet at the same time he didn't upset anyone. He held strong to his values and to what he believed in, right? And within the boundaries that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has laid out, the example is there, right? Now, one thing that I wanted to touch upon is hyper-conservatism. What is that exactly? I'm not sure what that means, right? And we need to understand what does it mean to be a conservative Muslim and a practicing Muslim, right? There's no such thing as a conservative Muslim. That doesn't make that idea is not within Islam. You're just a Muslim. You're just a practicing Muslim. Because nowadays, the reason why I'm saying this is because I have dealt and I'm dealing with youth who are growing a beard, but their parents are like, you're going too far. Now, is this going too far? Or is this as practicing about the Sunnah, right? I have teenagers that are performing salah in public, and their parents are like, you're going too far. You need to calm down. There's balance in thee. That's just being a Muslim. So we also need to understand that like there is no real such thing as if you want to say in Islam being extra conservative is taking every strict rule, every strict opinion out there. I guess you could say that's conservatism, but in reality there is just being a Muslim, right? Like wearing the hijab, that's not being conservative. That's just being a Muslim, right? So we also need to understand that. We need to, the way we balance it is ensure that our children don't go. And the other thing is when society is taking us so far this direction, in order for us to balance the scales, at times we might need to go a little bit extra, right? We need to go a little bit extra in order to balance the scales, right? One very, very famous scholar, right, in America. He told me this, or this was said in a private situation, so I won't disclose his name. But he was all like, look, to a certain extent, we need to create hatred for the disobedience of Allah, right? Like we need to create that dislike of the disobedience of Allah within our children. And then he said that this is and this is in accordance to what is in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He's praising the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, and He's saying, وَكَرَّهَ إِلَيْكُمُ الْكُفْرَ وَالْفُسُوقَ وَالْعِصْيَانِ, that they hated, they had a dislike towards kufr, towards disobedience of Allah, right? Towards lewd acts, right? They had this disinclination towards it. That is something we need to instill within our children, and we need to teach them how to balance. I don't like what you're doing, but that doesn't mean I hate you, right? I know that's hard, but you have to teach our children to act like that. You respect everyone around you, right? You respect everyone around you. But just because I respect you doesn't mean that I have to accept everything that you're doing. I don't agree with it, but I'll still respect you, right? And this is what I think us, at least in our communities, it's hard for us to do this, is that I don't agree with you, but I still respect you, right? Like in our mind, unity is all of us have to be the exact same. We don't all have to be the exact same. Sahaba radiallahu anhum disagreed on so many issues, right? On so many issues they disagreed, but the respect that they had for one another was extremely high. So nevertheless, is that the simple answer is teach them the seerah, right? Teach them about Islam, and then that will ensure that they don't go to either extreme.
The next question was, there was a couple of questions that came back to back, but subhanAllah, they each got like 30 plus likes on this question. And this is a very important question. So, what are my thoughts, or what are our thoughts on women and men texting as friends on social media? And then couple that with, what are your thoughts on free mixing between men and women, masjid events, free mixing, college events, free mixing, and what should be our approach to that? This is one of those questions that I think time and time again have been answered before, but it's always good as a refresher and as a reminder. There was a study that was done from not Muslims, from a group of non-Muslims, and they wanted to test whether or not men and women can be just friends. Many of us have read that article, many of us probably seen the data, and they found that conclusively that the answer was an astounding no. There's no way a man and a woman can ever be just friends with absolutely no other thoughts or ideas or emotions attached. And the reason for that is, well, there's many reasons for that, but one of the reasons they mention is because no two sides ever sort of said that, yes, I'm 100% free of thinking about the other person. Just a thought might cross my mind. And see, this is the thing. The thought crossing your mind is sufficient. It's sufficient of fitna. Now, here's the thing. This is data from some research company or whatever it is. But again, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned this all those years ago, that no man and woman are alone in a room except that the third person is shaitan. And just earlier, I mentioned all of the things about the whisperings of shaitan and what shaitan can get you to do. If shaitan can get you to mangle and mutilate your body, then it's very easy for shaitan to have somebody make someone commit zina by this waswasa. So in short, first and foremost, like Sheikh Saad mentioned, there's no real conservative Islam. There's just being a Muslim. What does the Sharia, if we all just knew what the deen was teaching us, things would be a lot easier, right? We just practice. The problem and the harm of free mixing is that, number one, you begin to lower your guard. And when you lower your guard, whether as a man or as a woman, right, this is where all of those temptations of shaitan start to hit home. Right? Because if traditionally, if naturally you keep distance from your non-mahram, right, brothers and sisters, they're non-mahram, you can marry them, you should stay away from them. But now you start to get friendly. Now you start to get close. And inevitably, in every single one of these scenarios, at work, social media has got to be absolutely the worst one of all of these. At work, at MSA events, at masjid events. The thing is once you start to get friendly, emotions and feelings start to develop. And once that begins to develop, that's when everything goes sour. With the advent of social media, this makes things 100,000 times worse faster, right? So it gets worse faster than it would in person, right? In personal interactions. There has been fitnas everywhere. The Muslim community is not free from this, right? This might sound extreme to some. This might seem like, well, if I'm in college, how am I going to avoid it? Look, the thing is, the reality is there are brothers who do it. There are brothers who continue to do it, sisters that do it, right? They hang out with your own group of people and you don't socialize with the opposite gender, right? Different questions will come from this conversation, which is like, well, then, I'm going to meet people to marry. That's different. If you have the intention to get married, this is a separate conversation. I think like next month on one of the Fridays, I'm actually doing a premarital workshop here. So come to that, find the flyer for it, show up there. But that's a separate topic. We're talking about just free mixing. The problem with that is that there is no guarantee of safety. And the problem is that, exactly like I mentioned, you start to lower your guard, you get friendly. After you get friendly, you start exchanging communications, you start going out to lunch, you start going out to dinner, you start calling, you start texting. And again, shaitan is shaitan and he is iblis, he is hopeless. He is the one who will make you hopeless. And so therefore, things very quickly go downhill from there. And with social media, like I said, because it happens faster, people have no haya. So people will say whatever they want, they'll send whatever pictures they want. There was a very interesting study. It wasn't a published study, but this was shared amongst some researchers, which I thought was very interesting anyways, which was that it showed that the communication style between men and women communicating in the early part of the day was very different than their communication styles in the later part of the day, in the evening. And the reason for that, some of the researchers stated, was that in the earlier part of the day, like in the morning, usually you're up, you're focused, you're aware of your actions and your emotions, so you're more on guard with the way that you communicate. So you're a lot more black and white. You know that I can't talk to her, or I can't talk to him, or I shouldn't send that text, I shouldn't call her, I shouldn't send that emoji. You're more aware of yourself and you're in control of your actions. But the shift happens in the later part of the evening. Why? Because you're busy, you're back from work, you're back from school, you're tired, you're more relaxed, it's late, you're relaxing, your guard is down, you feel more comfortable sending those messages. And as a result, not only are you physically less guarded, you're mentally less guarded. So now your morals and ethics, etc., starts to kind of fall through the cracks a bit. And so then you feel more promiscuous to send that text message, to send that image, to send that, whatever you were going to send. This is just additional supporting evidence to suggest that in almost every capacity of free mixing of just men and women together, whether it's the masjid, whether it's MSA events, whether it's at work, right? Wherever it is, you should avoid it at all costs. Now, this is also different because some people go in the complete opposite direction where they walk around and they just don't talk to anybody at all. Look, there are certain instances where it requires you to communicate with someone from the opposite gender. Look, the reality is, study the seerah, like Sheikh Saad mentioned. There's so much i'tidal in the lives of the Sahaba and the lives of the Prophet ﷺ. They had barriers and guidelines and all those things already in effect. When the people make this argument, why is there a divider in the masjid? During the time of the Prophet ﷺ, yes, the women prayed in the back, but the women also got up and left before the men did. The women got up and left before the men did. And it's even been reported that some of the men were to stand up and the Prophet ﷺ told them to sit back down so that the women can leave first and then the men can get up and leave. There is so much fairness in that, so much balance in that. But at the same time, it's not like women have no rights and they don't have the ability to communicate. They have to be shunned and locked in a closet. It's not saying that either. But it's just that everybody knows themselves. Everybody knows that, your heart's desire is to communicate with that person. Therefore, if you feed it, it will grow. So, that's the short and sweet answer. This can be a very lengthy answer as well. But inshallah, hopefully that answered that question. I'll take one more question, inshallah, and then I think we'll wrap it up. I don't want it to get too late, inshallah, for everyone. So this one's a little bit more of a sensitive question. So I'll answer this, but I just want everybody to know that there is a lot more that can be said here. So question came in that someone is asking that, what should be my reaction if a loved one of mine comes to me and discloses that they have, same-sex attraction? So what should I do? What should I do? This very much reminds me of the story that once someone came to Imam Ghazali, rahimahullah ta'ala, and they said to him, "Oh great Imam, there's a person and he's not coming to the masjid anymore. He's not coming for salah in the masjid. What's the fatwa?" People are always excited about what's the fatwa. We want to get pitchforks and burn places down. Like, what's the fatwa, Sheikh? And they're all waiting, anticipating. So he said the fatwa is that you go gently and grab his hand and you walk with him and you tell him, hey, let's go to the masjid, and you take him to the masjid and you pray together and you're there for him and you support him. That's the fatwa. It wasn't that exciting. It wasn't, shock and awe. It was go show good akhlaq, go show care and support, and maybe something happened in his life that kind of threw him off balance, and take him and walk with him and go back to the masjid. That's it. So what I'll say to address this point is that first and foremost, oftentimes, because this concept is very novel, I think, for many immigrants, for a lot of people who come from immigrant backgrounds, and even if this is not an immigrant family, I think within the Muslim community, this is something which is a kind of it's a shocking concept. It's difficult for some. So understand first and foremost, that person, that loved one is still your loved one. Allah, like I mentioned in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. Allah inspires everyone with various tests in life. And for some people, it is with regards to their attraction. Just like it may be for other people who are kleptomaniacs, and for whatever reason, they just have to steal something. This has absolutely no value. I just got to take something though. It's like this temptation inside, Or other people, for example, that have just so simply put, I have this desire to just eat food. I cannot stop. I just find so much enjoyment from eating, right? Or other people, I have a desire or attraction to small children, right? These are tests that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to each person, and each person has their own. So we recognize that the desire to be same-sex, attracted is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This doesn't make you any less Muslim. This doesn't make you any, somehow less valued in the eyes of Allah Azza wa Jal, right? So the first thing is that have kindness and mercy and love and open dialogue. Second of all, recognize that that person, that loved one, depending on where they are in their lives, they're coming to you for a reason. If they found it within themselves to talk to you about this issue, there's something very important about that and very significant that we have to pay attention to, which is that they find a closeness with you that they don't find with someone else. And you should preserve that. You should preserve that like a flame is going out in the rain. Why? Because think about it. For many people, this might be the sabab for them to leave Islam. This might be the reason for them to completely lose faith in Allah. So instead, don't brush them off, but bring them close. Our Shaykh al-Mashayikh, our teacher's teacher, rahimahullah ta'ala, he used to say that in his khanqa, in his majlis, that there were people that would come to him and they would cry and they would confess and they would say, Shaykh, I have these same-sex tendencies and this attraction. And I feel so dirty, I feel so bad, but this is my temptation. So the Shaykh, I remember one of our teachers mentioning that he brought him close, he gave him a hug, he says, don't worry, you can come to this majlis, you will never be kicked out of this place. You can always get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I will help you with that. I will help you with whatever temptations you have so that you don't fall into that again. I'll give you a regimen. I'll give you something to stick to so that, weekly you have your dhikr and you have your Quran and you have your physical exercise so that you can stay, consistent upon it. And inshallah, that will give you the strength and the resilience and the himmah to avoid engaging in that temptation. Just like we need that type of support in all of the various other fitan that we struggle with in our own lives. Not watching pornography, not engaging with, mixed sessions with men and women, mixed gatherings, being involved in those things. Just like it requires himmah to avoid those things, in the same light, it requires himmah to avoid this fitna and this test as well. The other thing I would say is that also find those resources. The same resources that I mentioned earlier, some of those things are very helpful for many people, that they can hear the plight of another Muslim who's also, for example, have the same type of attraction. They can listen to them, how they dealt with it, how they navigated the conversation, how they went about it, how they should live their lives, what types of things is okay to engage in, what types of things are not okay to engage in. And the last thing that I would say is that we should never look at the person who is going through some difficulty as some kind of outcast. If Allah Azza wa Jal did not cast them out, then it is not our place to cast anybody else out, right? And again, like I said, this is a very sensitive subject because this is something which is, connected to sexuality and something which is a very sensitive topic. At the same time, however, we should just understand, like Sheikh Saad mentioned in the beginning, that we acknowledge that the attraction, the same-sex attraction, in and of itself is not haram. Why? Because this is something that Allah has given you as a test in this dunya. However, the action upon that temptation is what brings a person to sin or elevates your status into piety, right? If you abstain from engaging in that fitna and that test, then your status is getting closer to Allah. But when you engage in that action and that fitna and that test, then this is what then becomes considered a sin. And we do believe, just to make it very clear, that the action on homosexual tendencies or same-sex tendencies is considered a sin. So we acknowledge these things, we understand them, but again, I want to make this very clear that in the same way that a person who has a desire to steal, who has the fitna, the test of stealing, but does not steal, gets an ajr for it, a reward. But if he does end up stealing, that's a sin. In the same light, the person who is tested with, for example, same-sex attraction, for him to not engage, then there's ajr for you in that. But for you to fall into extra ajr in that, because it's so much more difficult for you. But at the same time, for the person to engage in that, it would be considered a great sin. Definitely. And you should seek support for that. You should seek help for that. You know, if you need to speak to a counselor, a Muslim counselor, there are many resources for that. I myself work with Wasila Connections. So if anybody, for example, wants to make a referral or at least, take a look at that, then you can certainly do so. And then of course there are other counselors that you can inshallah reach out to. But in any case, the main thing is that you should not, kind of just leave that person on their own, abandon them and kind of leave them to their own devices. Again, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for tawfiq, and we ask Allah to make it easy for us. Everyone is going through different challenges. But Allah reward all of you for staying and listening to this program and staying afterwards for the questions. Inshallah, hopefully we got the answers that we needed. Barakallahu feekum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Jazakumullah khair, everyone, for coming out and staying this late on your Friday evening. I want to say once again, firstly, thank you to both of our speakers. It was an amazing lecture.